Commissioner Lauren Gardner, and one is Commissioner Steve Neighbor. So welcome both of you. While we're waiting, would you mind just taking a few minutes to tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. My name's Lauren Gardner, and I've lived in North Ogden since 2004. And I'm retired for the past several years. And I used to be the city engineer for North Ogden, so I'm familiar with these meetings but not from this side of the desk. I will from the staff side. So I enjoy all kinds of outdoor activities myself. Hiking, backpacking, fishing, climbing, all kinds of stuff like that. So
Welcome. We're
Yeah.
very grateful to have you.
all right, thank you.
And I'm Steve Neighbor. I've lived in North Ogden for 30+ years and I was a Davis County man, and I'm glad I'm a North Ogden man now because that traffic there is not good. But I've worked at the university, Weber State University, for over 40 years. The chief financial officer there. I also have economic development responsibilities. And so I've been on the advisory committee for the Ogden City Airport and various other kind of civic responsibilities. But I'm very happy to join the commission and give back to my community as a commissioner. So thank you.
Welcome. So we're going to start the meeting with an invocation or thought from Commissioner Bailey, and followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Green.
Hey, yeah, welcome all the new members. I think my thought today, I just wanted to kind of highlight a little bit of my experience here. I joined the Planning Commission thinking I had these like special talents that applied to it. And what I came to kind of realize is, everyone brings something to the table. A lot of us are relying on the actual staff to sort of clarify a lot of things to us. But for the new commissioners, you're prepared. Your gifts or talents, they provide a unique perspective here, and I'm looking forward to that. And I would just like to emphasize, from a private property standpoint, we're trying to interpret what's best, or what our best interpretation of the code is. And I'm a big believer in trusting, private property owners to know what's best for what they're doing, as long as it's within the, the bounds of the code and the rules. So that's kind of my little thought for the day.
If you'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So tonight we have all of the commission members present. And what I'd like to start out with consideration and action to approve the January 15th, 2025 Planning Commission meeting minutes. If anyone had a chance to take a look at those.
Chair. Actually, on number 1, we need to appoint a chair and a vice chair.
Oh, let's back up. Okay, let's do that first. So I believe it requires a motion to nominate a chair and a vote, and also a motion to nominate a vice chair and a vote.
So discussion first, is that, you want to discuss this first and then motion? Or do you want me to just throw a motion out there?
We don't have a chair. We don't know what we're doing.
And you can,
You feel
We have
like
acting
it's-
chair.
I have been here probably the longest. I would be happy to serve as the chair. I would like to do it, but if the commission would like somebody else, I would certainly respect that.
I'll second that.
Wait, that wasn't a motion.
I could motion myself, but
I would like to make a motion to appoint Commissioner Nancaro as the chair for the North Ogden City Planning Commission.
I'll literally second that.
There we go.
Thank you.
And now you can have discussion on the motion before taking the vote.
Discussion.
I agree with that.
I think we should-
Okay, let's go ahead and take a vote. Commissioner Watson,
Yes.
Commissioner Neighbor,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Bailey,
Yes.
Commissioner Webb.
Should I say no just to
You
be?
can.
No, yes.
Commissioner Gardner.
Yes.
So we've got,
And
everybody.
you also vote.
Oh,
Yeah.
do I can vote on myself? I also vote yes. So it's unanimous and I appreciate the vote and the vote of confidence from everybody. So that's-
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I would like to make a motion to nominate Commissioner Green as vice chair.
I would second that.
Thank you both. I appreciate that.
Discussion? Anybody else?
Agreeable.
Okay, let's go ahead and take
Easy.
a vote then. Commissioner Bailey,
Yes.
Commissioner Gardner,
Yes.
Commissioner Webb,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Neighbor,
Yes.
Commissioner Watson.
Yes.
And I vote yes. So that's unanimous and congratulations, Commissioner Green.
Thank you. Same to you.
Thanks. Well, let's go ahead and go back to consideration and action to approve the January 15th, 2025 Planning Commission meeting minutes. Did everybody have a chance to take a look at those?
I reviewed them and didn't notice any errors, so I don't know if anyone else saw corrections, but they looked accurate. I would be happy to make a motion, but I wanted to allow opportunity if anyone. Okay, I will motion that we approve the January 15th, 2025 Planning Commission meeting minutes. I'll make a motion that we do so.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those are approved. Does anybody have any ex parte communications or conflict of interest to report or declare? All right. Since we do have some members of the public here tonight, we've got several things on the agenda. I just wanted to review the public comments procedures during the meeting. Time is made available for anyone in the audience to address the commission concerning matters pertaining to city business. Citizens will be asked to limit their remarks or questions to 5 minutes each. Any materials that are displayed or referenced, such as pictures or written materials, are part of the record and must be left with the commission. Speakers are required to have signed in at the door and will state their name and city before beginning their remarks. If you agree with the previous speaker, state your agreement to avoid repetitious remarks. Speakers shall address the commission from the podium or microphone and shall address all comments to the planning commission. So at this time, we provide an opportunity for public comments for things that are not on the agenda. If you've come to address the commission on things that will be covered under the agenda, you'll have an opportunity during that time. So does anybody have any issues that they would like to bring up that are not on the agenda?
JD Dalpass, North Ogden resident. I just wanted to come down here and welcome Lauren Gardner and Stephen Neighbor as our newest Planning Commission members. I really appreciate your willingness to put your hats, your names in the hat and be selected for this. I understand that you were both vetted through a process with the mayor and a couple of the council members. So I appreciate that you went through that process and that you were able to be selected. I also wanted to publicly thank Eric Thomas and Brandon Mason for their many, many, many years of service on the Planning Commission. They both did such a phenomenal job. And for anyone that has been around the city for any amount of time and heard the way that they would deliberate and the way that they would go about their business, it was just top notch. And so I thank them as well. And I hope you guys have a great meeting tonight.
Thank you. So we're going to actually start with a legislative item tonight. Public hearing, consideration and action on a legislative application to rezone property at 2666 North, 400 East from residential city center zone to a commercial downtown zone. And the presenter for that tonight will be Scott Hess.
Thank you, Chair. I'm kind of losing my voice, so I'll do my best, but we have a legislative application to rezone property at 2666 North 400 East from residential city center to commercial downtown. This was publicly noticed, mailed noticed on January 13th to property owners within 300 feet, and then has been on the city website since January 24th. It's about half an acre. It's currently RCC, and it's right on the edge of the commercial downtown zone. I do want to point out on the map, there's a 10-plex that's just sort of south and east of this location that has a small holding strip that comes across and touches Washington. So physically, the RCC zone the commercial downtown zone as requested won't physically touch the next commercial downtown zone, but it's just a minor access parcel, and it's really a utility easement that exists for that 10-plex there. And the proposed land use is professional offices for commercial use. So as a reminder for considering a legislative matter, and we break these items out separately, and this is part of the Planning Commission's trainings, but legislative items are those when the Planning Commission is acting as a recommending body to the City Council. So the City Council has wide discretion in taking legislative action. Examples of legislative actions are general plan, zoning map, land use text amendments. Legislative actions require that the Planning Commission give a recommendation to the City Council, and typically the criteria for making a decision related to a legislative matter requires compatibility with the general plan and existing codes, which we'll run through pretty quickly here. So in this case tonight, the decision that you are making is a recommendation that will then be taken forward to a future City Council meeting. Typically, we skip a City Council meeting so that minutes are available. That depends a little bit on our timing of our minutes, but at this point, City Council meetings are the second and fourth Tuesday of each month, and that's when the final decision would be held. But this is the public's opportunity for a formal public hearing. So we'll ask you to open a formal public hearing after staff's comments. So the applicant is requesting a zone change at the property address 2666 North 400 East from residential city center to commercial downtown. It is directly adjacent to the CCDT zone, and the applicant's desire to use the property as professional office commercial space. Looking at the zoning and land use policy, some general guidelines are that a definitive edge should be established between types of uses to protect the integrity of each use. This is in effect to stop what used to be called spot zoning, which is no longer illegal. You can zone a single property owner any zone that you want to, but it's a way to say, are we being congruent in our zoning, and are we fitting into the general character of the surrounding area? Staff comment, the proposed rezone is adjacent to other commercial zoning. It doesn't create an island of disconnected unique zoning. It's bordered by CCDT on the south side, bordered by residential city center on the east and north as you get a little bit more commercial towards North Ogden Elementary School. The site's currently used as a single-family home, or is built as a single-family home, but the applicant desires to use it as a professional business, and the applicant provided a pretty strong history of how this home or this structure has been used for a wide variety of uses over time. Second is zoning should reflect existing use of the property to the greatest extent possible. For the staff comment, the community commercial zone is compatible with the existing and proposed uses. We have several areas along Washington Boulevard with old homes that have been converted into semi-commercial uses or professional offices, salons, insurance agencies, small boutique shops. So that is not without precedence along Washington Boulevard. Where possible, properties that face each other across a local street, and Washington Boulevard is hardly a local street. It's a 120-foot wide, rather large barrier, but this property is immediately across the street and adjacent to Lee's Marketplace and that commercial area that we have. and everything else that is along Washington Boulevard all the way to Alberta is zoned R4, residential 4, which is a multifamily zone, allowing up to 15 units per acre, even though the majority of those homes are still utilized as single-family homes, and there are actually a few small businesses in those as well. The consideration that you have tonight, oh, the last one is that zoning boundaries should not cut across individual lots. That is one kind of hard line in state code, and what the city sticks with is you don't dual zone any single parcel ID. You don't dual zone any single property owner. They're asking for their whole piece to be zoned as commercial downtown and then have a site plan that's been indicated in here that has some updates to it. So the proposed boundary does not cut across any individual property lines. So your land use authority consideration tonight is the proposal consistent with the general plan that was updated in 2022? Does the proposal meet the North Ogden City zoning ordinance standards? And how does the proposal relate to the zoning and land use policy guidelines? And staff's recommendation tonight is that the Planning Commission conduct the public hearing, receive public comment, consider the general plan rezoning guidelines, and then make a recommendation to City Council. Staff does, in this case, recommend the Planning Commission find the application is consistent with the general plan and recommends approval of the rezone from residential city center zone to the community commercial downtown CCDT zone. But there's just a few caveats with that, is that we can professionally recommend that. Council can, or the Planning Commission can then make your own recommendation, and it's ultimately the City Council at a future later date that will make the final legislative decision. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions, and I believe we have the applicants here in the room with us tonight.
Is there a particular reason why this block of lots on the east side of Washington aren't already upzoned? Something like this?
Yeah, mostly because the city hasn't proactively rezoned anyone. And that, I guess that's not necessarily true, but for the most part, that's been the position of North Ogden, is we rezone upon request. So we could proactively rezone all of the properties on the east side of Washington up to a certain address point, like say Alberta, as commercial or multifamily or another, but the City Council has not elected to do that. So that's a great question, but really it's just because no one has asked for it before.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I'd like to go ahead and open the public hearing, and if we could hear from the applicant first.
Trevor Osborne, resident of North Ogden.
Kate Osborne, resident of North Ogden.
So just generally speaking, we've never been to a planning commission meeting before, so I'm not exactly sure what you'd like to hear. But just generally speaking, as Mr. Hess said, we're looking to rezone this property for professional use. I'm an attorney. I have an office in Ogden right now. I'd like to bring it more local. That office space is like 3 minutes drive from my house. I have a number of employees that are local. The foot traffic would be very minimal. I go into the office once every 2 weeks. I try to work from home. I appear in court a lot, so I'm just not in the office a whole lot. I allow my staff hybrid access to the office, so they go in when they need to. For most of them, that's usually a couple days a week. The property has historically been used as a salon, and it wasn't just a place where people would go in and get their hair cut on a chair. The previous residents have a salon built into their home, and they turned the front living room into a waiting area for the salon. So it has been being used as a mixed use property for quite some time now. I think that the residents will likely see less foot traffic with my office space than it did when it was being used as a salon. Most of my clients, because I don't go into the office very much, most of my clients don't come to the office either. There's usually just a few occasions when someone comes to drop off documents, or when we have to have a mediation or something in office. But other than that, clients still expect attorneys to have a physical brick and mortar building. Otherwise, you don't have a lot of credibility. And so this provides that opportunity for us. And that kind of sums it up. Questions for us?
I'll say something too.
Sorry.
So I am just finishing up my master's in architecture. So I am excited to have an office space also to help, just to serve the city of North Ogden. And I have a friend and neighbor who's also a North Ogden resident, and she is a therapist, and she was super excited to hear about our plan and wanted an office space right away. So I feel like it would serve the community, and there would be local North Ogden residents there opening businesses and providing services to the city. So thank you.
That just, if I can just add one bit more, we put in, I don't know if you had a chance to review it, but in the reasons for rezoning, we referenced a number of specific pages in North Ogden's general plan where they specifically anticipate this type of rezoning for uses like this, which I think cuts down on, right now, there's only one other attorney in North Ogden, at least that I could find. There's one attorney and he does not practice the same law that I practice. And so providing those services to the residents, I think would be a benefit to the community.
Can I ask what line of your law practice is in?
Litigation. So I do a lot of domestic litigation and business litigation.
So is this, I'm assuming it's mixed offices then. It's not just your office. Will there be other entities in there as well?
So right now, it will just be my office.
Gotcha.
We think that we're probably going to put in about 4 offices,
Mhm.
maybe 5. My practice will probably occupy 3 of those offices. And then, as Kate said, when she finishes with her architecture degree, then she may very well have an office space there too. So it just depends on the space.
Sure.
But professionals, either
Yeah.
way.
Thank you.
Got just a question, the new guy here. So it sounds like it was already a business of some type. Was that out of compliance with? It wasn't.
No, we allow home occupations of all kinds. So not spas, I'm sorry.
Beauty salons.
Hair cutting and beauty salons are allowed as a home occupation. They're limited to, there's some parking requirements. They're limited to the number of people and clients they can serve, the number of employees that they can have. And I just actually, I want to see what Ryan had to say. So I wondered if this had come in. We get these types of applications several different ways, and they applied for the rezone first, but the business license application at times is the driver for the rezone or the driver for the land use decision. In this case, they applied for the rezone first, so they did their kind of due diligence on legislative process. But otherwise, they likely could have operated as a home occupation and done this, but to have, like you had mentioned, several offices and then have people come to the home, that's not allowed under a home occupation the same way like a construction office can be a home occupation, but we don't want 15 trucks showing up at somebody's home and then leaving in the big commercial truck to go and do concrete work, right? So it has not been it has not been an illegal use or a legal non-conforming. It's just been home occupations in the past or other simple business licenses. And now they're trying to turn it into something, so I would say slightly more intense, but really still fits with the character of the neighborhood.
Thank you for that.
Doesn't for home occupation, don't they actually have to live there?
They do.
Yeah, where this is just an office space, correct?
Yeah.
I just wanted to thank you guys for including kind of the level of detail with the zoning ordinance change. It wouldn't, I don't believe, require you to put these plans in terms of what this office space will look like and the footprint. So that was just helpful to see what you're envisioning and what this might do in terms of neighbors and the impact on them. It looks like you're actually removing several old outdated structures and improving things overall. Is that an accurate statement that this property is like going to also be improved in addition to having your offices inside?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's like an outhouse on the property, what used to be used as an outhouse. So we'll be removing that. And there's a big garage that's not beautiful. We're going to be taking down, planting trees, have a small possible parking lot. And then we do plan on updating the exterior so that it looks more modern and pretty. But again, like the footprint of the house stays the same. And I think that the yard will look better actually when we're done.
Thank you.
Keeping as many trees as we can, grass.
Thank you.
I have a question for Scott. Scott, the amount of parking they have provided, is that sufficient for the uses?
I'll have to go back and see for professional offices, but it's so many parking stalls per office or so much kind of usable square footage. But generally, yes. I mean, if they've got 4 or 5 offices, they really don't need more parking stalls than 4 or 5. They might have 1 or 2 guest parking stalls total. So it
Okay.
should be, I think their ultimate site plan that they envision will be fine. That will likely, since they're going through the whole process, the rezone start, which would be approved potentially by city council, and then they would have a commercial site plan because they're adding a significant amount of hardscape and doing some other items. Will either come back to planning commission, or it's possible that'll be dealt with on a land use permit. We just need to decide what the like scale of change on site will be.
Would that site plan include any signage if they needed some for their business too?
Yeah, so the rezone to the commercial, the CCDT zone will permit them to have the same signage as everybody else, which is a certain square footage of signage per frontage that they can do up to a maximum of 250 square feet. So you'd calculate their maximum frontage that they have, and then they could put either a monument sign, think Pack Tax, or the physical therapy office. I know it's owned by Alan Curbs, but that's not what it's called. So there's the sports physical therapy and Pack Tax are both homes that have monument signs out front. We also have some single family homes like Olive Flutter on 1900 North and Washington that have a wall sign, and it's an older existing single family home that's been converted into a shop. So you'll have the option based on the code of doing whatever signage you want to. And that's far greater than what our home occupation signage allows. Like kind of, you could think of like a residential for sale sign, like 4 square feet of permissible area. They would get a larger sign. So they could put, attorney and architects are here type of sign based on their frontage.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant?
What type of architecture are you studying or planning to do, or I'm just curious?
Yeah, right now, I'm about halfway through my master's, and we've done all different types of projects, building, apartments. Right now I'm working on a school. But so I don't know for sure what I'll want to do when I'm done. I did have someone come and just ask if I could like do their plans for like their home that they're building, and that seemed exciting to me. So that's kind of what I'm thinking is like remodels or new builds, doing the plans and then getting them ready to turn into the city.
Yeah.
So it might change, but right now that's my plan.
Yeah. I think these are great services to have in the city. So I think it's really
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments from the public?
Okay. Al Hollywood. I'm a North Ogden resident. I actually live within 300 feet of where this planned activity will take place. Is this going to affect our property values one way or the other? Do you recall whether the road widening changed our property values one way or the other? We didn't lose any acreage on our side of the street. I live in the 3 houses that'll be across the street from where this project is going to be. The traffic can get a little crazy at times. I don't think, from what you've described, there's going to be any more traffic. The person who previously owned this property had a huge dump truck that he drove in and out. And the fact that that is no longer going to be happening is going to make the neighborhood a little bit quieter, which will be welcome. Yeah, I don't see a downside to this, and I live in the immediate proximity to it.
Great.
Yeah. So that being said, I'd only worry about how it's going to affect my property value. As more commercial buildings come in within 300 feet of where I live, is that going to change my property value? Either devalue it or increase the value? Anybody have a estimation on that, one way or the
I
other?
think it's hard to say conclusively, and particularly since it's still going to look like a single-family home, but I think it would be hard for us to predict that.
Yeah, from the street, do you anticipate that it's going to look any different?
It'll look better.
It'll look better.
Better.
Okay. Well, that could only improve then, right? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Here, I should just direct to them, I guess. I'm your neighbor to the east.
Will you give us your name and?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Thanks.
John Shoup of North Ogden. And, yeah, we're just, connected right to their property. And it sounds like a nice, quiet neighbor. So in our household, we would sit there and wonder, well, how will that affect your back fence? Are you going to change anything there? That's more of a curiosity thing. Yeah, change one.
But yeah, we would probably just update to something.
Okay. And where would your parking go? Out front?
Sir, could you address the commission?
Oh, yeah. Where would the parking go? Would it go out front?
Maybe you just could ask your questions and then we'll give the applicant an opportunity to come back up and answer them for you.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you.
I don't know. Do you have anything to say?
Is that all your questions, sir?
Yeah. Are you finished with your?
Yeah, I'll just talk to them.
Okay, that would be great.
I think Scott had an image of the parking. Oh yeah, there it is. So there's already the space to the north, that's already asphalt. We might have to add just a little bit, but it's pretty much asphalt, I think, already to the other property line. So, and then on that back part is where the garage is right now too. So I think that's probably concrete. Anyway, so there's some parking there, but that won't really change. And then we're just adding kind of where the patio is now, some parking to the back.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from the public? Anybody online, Sean?
Yes, there is a raised hand. Philip Swanson.
Hi
Mr.
there.
Swanson,
Can you
are
hear?
there?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Philip Swanson, North Ogden City. I think this is a good use, and I really like what they have planned and the design changes and things that they're looking at doing. I think this will fit in well. That's all I have.
Thank you. So at this time, I'd need a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Thank you. The public hearing is closed and commissioners, do you have any discussion before we entertain a motion to make a recommendation to the city council?
This is probably just a question for the planning department, but you know, it seems like they're planning to use the existing single family residence with the change of zoning. Let's say they remove the residence. I think to make a full recommendation here, what is the highest allowed use, you know, in terms of if it were to continue as within this zoning, you know, what are the future ramifications that are allowed?
The most impacting thing I can think of off the top of my head would be like a convenience store. Like 7-Eleven could move to this property, being that it's commercial downtown. It's not big enough for that. So at half acre, it's limited sort of in size. One thing is that our fencing code does require that between commercial and residential for new build commercial, the fencing requirement is 8 feet. And that is one element that the planning commission can weigh in on. So we have several locations in the city, and I hate naming names, but I'll point to a few. So Maverick, west of Taco Time, the new Bank of America, we required an 8-foot tall fence, 8-foot tall vinyl fence between those and the existing residential as part of the new build applications that came through the planning commission on a site plan. This is an existing use that's been in use for a long time as mixed use. So I think there's some discretion there on what a reasonable fencing standard is. So, you know, maybe it's a 6-foot non-transparent fence. Maybe that's like a 6-foot vinyl fence is what seems reasonable between a commercial office, a commercial office being low level, low residence, not a bunch of people coming in. They're not buying stuff there. They're not having large deliveries, and how it will affect the neighboring property owners. But there are some ramifications that come with making it commercial, and we can't predict what the rezone today to commercial on a half-acre property will turn it into in the future. Because, that could be the house gets knocked down and then a 5,000 square foot multi-bay business shows up, or a soda shop with a drive-through, or any number of other things. Because once it's commercial, once it's CCDT, anything permitted in CCDT is just one administrative site plan application away from getting approved.
Yeah. And, do setbacks changes? Is there a maximum allowed height change?
The height, interestingly enough, is still 35 feet. So for our commercial zone, it's 35 feet. You can vary it as long as the average height of all buildings remains at 35 feet. So you don't really have a height change. Commercial does allow smaller setbacks, mostly in the front yard. So you can allow planning commission can allow up to 0 lot line setbacks on the front. So you could have, this building could be built out to the sidewalk. Like say they wanted to build the way you used to do like a small shop on the front of a single family home. Think of like Avenues of Salt Lake City. There's a few of those that you have a little snout house, like built out business. So you could technically do that and build out into the front yard. So there are setback differences and changes that are affected differently than what the like standard 30-foot front, 20-foot rear, 10-foot side yard setbacks are in residential.
Okay.
You're also on a what's the right of way width, John? 98 feet. Washington Boulevard's a pretty significant roadway. So retaining viable single family homes in areas that are immediately adjacent to commercial is becoming more difficult. And this one, has been historically used as a mixed use.
Great. I just wanted to clarify so everyone kind of had a future outlook on it.
Any other discussion? I'd entertain a motion or a recommendation to the city council.
I'll make a motion to recommend a rezone for the current property we've been discussing off Washington Boulevard.
Do you need to be specific from RCC to CCDT?
Oh, can you help me out with that one?
Yeah,
A lot of letters.
Yeah, from residential city center to a community downtown zone.
Yeah, so I'll make a motion to recommend a change of zoning from residential
City center.
to commercial downtown.
Yep.
Great.
I'll second that.
All right, let's take a vote. Commissioner Bailey,
Yes.
Commissioner Gardner,
Yes.
Commissioner Webb,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Neighbor,
Yes.
and Commissioner Watson.
Yes.
And I vote yes, so it unanimously passes as a positive recommendation to the city council.
And I'll just let you know that given that we record all meetings, they're available by YouTube. The earliest this would go would be the 25th of February to city council. If we get on that soon, sometimes the minutes lag a little bit. I don't know that this is one we'll need to wait for the minutes for. So we can chat. We'll talk about the 25th of February. And if it's not that meeting, then it would be the second Tuesday of March for your final decision at city council. Thank you.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to the administrative items. Item number 7 is consideration and action regarding an administrative application. The preliminary plat approval for Shaw Century Farms Townhomes, 62 lots, located at approximately 300 East Pleasant View Drive. And the presenter is Ryan Nunn, city planner.
Thank you. So This item and the next is the subdivision and a site plan that are running concurrently together for the Shaw Century Farms. This preliminary plat is for a development of 62 lot townhomes. This Shaw Century Farms was is under a development agreement that went through the city council when it was rezoned last year, which allowed for some open space requirements, some land sharing for a city park that'll be adjacent to it. And then, so for our staff comments, we've completed our TRC meeting. Our city engineer has made his report, and so with its townhome distinction, the code that it'll fit under is the R4, but also our PUD code. So where each townhome meets the minimum lot square footage. The minimum in our code is 800, but these are 1,000, so it meets that requirement. And then the location of these lots meets the agreed development agreement, which specified certain setbacks that need to be met for the property lines. Let's see. So as staff, we recommend approval of this preliminary plat, conditional upon our TRC meeting, our engineering report, and our staff report. We do have our applicants here as well, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Anybody have any questions?
I noticed this plat has a combination of private and public roads. But I don't see on the plat where the indication that the private are private. So can we ensure that that happens?
Yeah, I think that should be possible, yeah.
Yeah, we can handle that between preliminary and final.
Right, okay.
So in entitle edit, as far as my understanding goes, the state code, and I'm not a city attorney, and that's why I love having John here, because I get to point to him and tell him, he tells me when I'm wrong. But what we are approving is the general roadway configuration, roadway widths and acceptance of roadway dedication, and then the total number of lots. So things to expect as a land use authority planning commission from a preliminary plat to a final. If you ever go back out and you look for final plats and you say, well, that's not exactly what we approved, is that the boxes on the ground can kind of move around, but we can't add or subtract. We really don't add or subtract any boxes on the ground. And we don't, for the most part, change major roadway configurations outside of something like fire life safety or providing for fire hydrants or a turnaround. Sometimes those things happen administratively, but for the most part, what you get at a preliminary plat is what's by state code called vesting, meaning that the developer would leave tonight knowing that they could build 62 units of approximately these locations, with 300 East being a public street, on this piece of property at these setbacks. And that's kind of what you're weighing in, is the sandbox that you get to interpret for the plat itself. And then we'll talk about the site plan after. And Ryan explained it really, really well, but that's a great catch that I hadn't caught yet. Thank you, Laura.
Is that something that we need to include in the conditions of approval?
Yeah, I would say that I would just request in the conditions of approval that all public streets and private streets be identified clearly on the plat, and we'll make sure that note gets rolled over into whatever signed final plat we end up with.
Any other questions from the? Any questions from the public or input from the public on this item? Anybody online, John? Okay.
We do have they lowered their hand.
Then, I move that we grant preliminary plat approval for Shaw Century Farms townhomes, subject to conditions from the engineer's report, the technical review committee memo, the conditions noted in the staff report, and the identification of private v. public roads on that plat.
Second that complicated motion. Nice job.
We have a motion and a second, so let's take a vote. Commissioner Watson,
Yes.
Commissioner Neighbor,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Webb,
Since Eric's here, yes.
Commissioner Gardner,
Yes.
Commissioner Bailey.
Since Eric's here, no. Yes.
And I vote yes, so that item is passed. So let's move on to the next item, number 8, consideration and action regarding an administrative application. Site plan approval for Shaw Century Farms townhomes, same property. This is the same development, just this would be the site plan. So it's kind of going hand in hand with the previous item. And it will be presented by Ryan Nunn.
Right, thank you. Yes, as stated, this is the accompanying site plan with that preliminary plat. Basically, with this site plan, as I previously stated, it's part of a development agreement, which primarily focused on setbacks, and then some of those shared property and traded property for public parks. So going through our 4 code and our PUD code, the setbacks requirements are changed to meet development agreement, which reduced some of those side yard setbacks to 15 feet, I believe, or 15 feet in the front. And allowed some of the side yards and rear yards to be reduced. Let's see. With the site plan, really, it should be conditional that it meets the codes, it meets the approval of a preliminary plat with, a final plat application as well to make some of those changes that are needed. And to meet its development agreement. So, let's see. Yeah, so staff, again, we recommend approval that with those conditions of the preliminary plat and its conditions, that another important note is that we don't recommend any playground equipment which is specified in our PUD code to be added because of the proximity of a city park. Notes from a TRC memo we had specifically were some additional streetlights that needed to be added. So we recommend approval with those specified conditions in our staff report and additionally from the approval of the preliminary plat and its documents. Again, I can help take any more questions, and we also have the applicant here.
And Ryan, if I can just really quickly add with the PUD code, because this one was a very unique situation in the original starting out as a small lot, single family zone that turned into R4, but the applicant provided a significant financial match to a city property next to it that's going to have a park as well as dedicated parcel A, and it has designed the detention basin in a way that will be kind of flat and feel seamless as it rolls into the city park. So not only are we not requiring like a tot lot or a piece of equipment, but we want to show the benefit that there was $100,000 granted towards the city in developing a public park, and we've purchased the Waterworks Parks equipment. If you've been to Knudsen Park in Cottonwood Heights, there will be a really fun water feature in the public park space that's going to be developed kind of in line with this. So just a note on how sometimes the legislative process has these trade-offs, and that was one that was a really good balance between the city and developer.
Yeah, I think that's a great clarification. And one of the reasons for it is it's so visual. You know, this is at our busiest intersection where there's the most visibility. It's kind of sitting up on a little bit of a hill, and people are going to see it. And so seamlessly kind of doing that is, I think, really thoughtful. And the developer working with the city on that is great. One question that I had is, as you were talking about the street lights being added and things like that, because there's so many lights in that area. Has there been any thought about how those street lights, or would they just be like standard lights, or, you know, is there any thought to that at all?
It's part of the agreement that all the lights are shielded and that a certain amount of lumens per foot are not allowed to spill out onto neighboring properties. So dark sky compliant, and then there will be a photometric lighting plan that shows how many lumens are reaching the corners of the property to make sure they're appropriately lit, but also to make sure that it's not affecting the lighting in the neighboring property.
Cool. Yeah.
There was an issue where they were missing 2 light poles but part of the conditions that were recommended in the staff report for approval was the location of the 2 remaining light poles on the site, would have to be added. So that could be included just in a motion, just by referring to those conditions of approval.
Ryan, can you clarify, it references complementary colors, and then it has exhibit, I think it's C. Mine's black and white, and I might be mistaken, but isn't this the point in time when we need to make sure the colors go with the existing requirements?
Yeah, I believe that's correct. Yeah, where we approve design and materials
Yeah.
as part of the site plan.
Too, when they come up.
Perfect, because I just didn't know if maybe my version, like other people are seeing it, and, okay.
Does have any other questions before we call the applicant? If we could have the applicant come to the podium. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, my name's Mark Hansen from Far West.
You had a question, Commissioner?
Yeah, just color, complementary colors was mentioned, but what color specifically will these buildings be in?
Neutral.
So, and obviously conforming with the North Ogden codes.
Yes.
Related to this.
Yes, they'll be earth tone.
No, hot pink.
Hot pink.
And we're
Like the
talking
Up House.
alternating back and forth, correct? Not a single color scheme.
Yes, the individual that we partnered with is making a significant investment and is planning on making these beautiful. So they will have a good feel and not deter anything away from what's already going on in the city.
So I guess a clarification. So, I mean, obviously I understand your business. We've known each other for a long time, but you've partnered with someone to build these. Can I get some clarification on what that means?
Well, we are the developers, so I apologize, but we've contracted with a builder who we're really excited about to build the
Okay,
buildings.
awesome.
We're not contractors.
Sure. But so will you have some sort of say in how they're built, or help me understand what that, you're
just
selling it to
means-
them or?
Yes, we're selling to them.
Okay. And once you've sold it, will you have any say with what they do, or?
No, but we're feeling like we're turning over to the best hands possible.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
And the site plan that you see today, the architectural drawings, the elevations will bind them in many ways to what they build. So if they deviate from it, I think our code has a deviation of up to 5%. So that's, minor deviations and things we can approve administratively. But if this were to be approved and then they turned around and they said, no, we want these to be, connexes that are converted in all glass structures or something super modern, it would require return to Planning Commission for approval. So in some ways, this is one of those where your site plan approval at Planning Commission as land use authority gives some like bumpers to what we can expect. And There's a small amount of leeway that typically happens between a site plan and the architectural drawings, but that's something that when the building permits come in, we open them and make sure, oh yeah, this basically looks like this thing that you said you were going to build and you didn't, for better or worse term, like didn't bait and switch for something worse, essentially. We don't have hard requirements on colors unless you're a commercial zone, and then it can't be bright white. But otherwise, like neutrals, earth tones is generally acceptable. This particular development agreement did not specify that every building had to be a different color or they had to be different architectural elements next to each other. We've done that in past large projects. So this one's going to be pretty congruent and similar, but just probably with some alternating colors. And color is one of those things that not everybody agrees on, but we can't necessarily tell them specifically what color it can be unless John, as the city attorney, tells us that we can. But I think we can't, we
And there
can.
was obviously no intent to do so. It was just a question on this particular location. There was some controversy with rezoning and what we're doing with this. So I love to hear that it's going to be just in North Ogden's, I don't know, just it matches essentially.
Yeah.
Because I think that that's what's going to show the fellow, our citizens here in North Ogden that this was a really good choice for this property. So that's why I just wanted to mention that. And typically they're not black and white. So thank
Yeah.
you.
And I think another thing I would say is I think there's been significant care put into this. And, you guys have been here a few times before, and I think this is going to turn out great. And we appreciate the thought that you've put into it.
Thank you. When we started this, I had hair like Chad. It's been a long time.
That's the second comment on my hair in one day.
I'm jealous of that.
I've known you too long to know if that's true or
That's
not.
true. No, but I do want to tell you guys, we've sold it to a custom home builder that is top notch. And we couldn't be more excited about whose hands it's falling into. It's not a portfolio builder. It's not a turn and burn builder. It's a custom home builder that cares about his product, resides in North Ogden. And he wants to drive by it every day and be proud of the project too. So we feel like this has been a win-win for the city and for us, and we appreciate your patience with us and working with us over the years. And I do want to apologize during the last 4 years in any meetings if I've offended any of you or any of your colleagues, your frustrations. I apologize, and I do appreciate all the work that the city employees have put into this, because they've been a great help and educate us on a lot of things. So thank you.
And thank you for your cooperation and contributions in that development agreement.
You bet.
Towards
It's
that
going to be, yeah, thank you. We're excited about it.
I think that's evident. And I think that because we have local people, you're local, we grew up around here.
Yep.
These things matter to us. And I'm very happy to be on the public record saying that local people looking at our community and the developers and the things that they build here and have pride in, it matters to our city. I think it should always be a serious consideration when we do these things. So thank you for your great work.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I ask a question? We're just going through the packet here, and there's this development agreement with the city. Is that a typical?
It's more occasional than typical.
Yeah, development agreements typically follow multifamily or larger projects. If this one, the development agreement was the outcome of a request to rezone from what was previously small lot, single family to residential R4. In the city council, we did the training on legislative administrative decision-making. So the city council in its legislative ability has broad latitude on its decision-making. And they said, yes, we're willing to accept an R4 type of rezone up to a certain number of units with approximately these setbacks. But the trade-off is going to be, we want assistance with a public park, and that's not unwarranted. And those legislative decisions through a development agreement can be anything from control of housing values, home ownerships. That's how cities get trailheads built. We've had roadways constructed. Like this legislative process gives this huge sandbox to play in of decision making. And in this particular case, the two concessions that the developer gave up, in my opinion, was financial remuneration for the park, and that for 5 years, 20% of the units would be owner occupied through a deed restriction. And for those two things that the developer gave up, the city was willing to grant them the density necessary to make the project viable. So it just was a
So for example, city getting their interest incorporated into a development project.
correct. Yep. And we have developed most of our larger multifamily projects are bound by a development agreement. Some single family projects are bound by development agreements. It just sort of depends on during the legislative process, which the planning commission gets to weigh in on and say, yeah, we think these are things that would be great, but the city council ultimately decides. And then you can think of a development agreement as like an appendix to the zoning code. So for Ryan, in reviewing the site plan, our typical setback for residential structures that are multifamily is 20 feet, but this development agreement said can be down to 10 feet. So we provided a restriction because this is such a strange shaped lot and it has a lot of slope across it that to make a project pencil. Yeah, exactly. So it should, like, the best legislative agreements that are development agreement based become a little bit of a give and take on both sides, in my opinion.
Okay, that's helpful.
Yeah, thanks, Steve.
Any other comments from the public? Commissioners, any discussion on this item? I would entertain a motion, please.
Motion to approve Shaw Century Farm site plan with adherence to the conditions in the preliminary plat and the development agreement.
Could you also add the conditions in the staff report?
And staff reports. I knew I'd miss something.
I'll second that.
Right. Let's go ahead and take a vote. Commissioner Bailey,
Yes.
Commissioner Gardner,
Yes.
Commissioner Webb,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Neighbor,
Yes.
Commissioner Watson.
Yes.
And I vote yes. So let's go ahead and move on to item number 9. Consideration and action regarding an administrative application. Preliminary plat approval for the White Rock subdivision. Phase 4, 12 lots, located at approximately 3090 North Mountain Road. And the presenter for this one is Scott Hess.
Thank you. So this is the final phase of White Rock subdivision. This is phase 4. It is 12 lots. It connects Mountain Road to 3090 North. The road returns on itself, comes around the corner. If anybody visited the site, this is where North Ogden Divide Road is. It's significantly higher than the lots will be, and the road actually begins to kind of drop elevation and return back to Mountain Road. This is 7.89 acres. It's in the Hillside Protection HP2 zone and is on a single parcel. The Hillside Protection 2 zone you can think of as essentially our residential R 12.5. So it requires 12,500 square foot lots, but the Hillside Protection area is areas where we have known geologic hazards or other, high water table, unstable soils, anything like that. And this property is crossed by the fault line, but it's quite a bit up on the hill. And this is in the alluvial fan area. So as part of White Rock's phases 1 through 4, they did a significant geologic study as well as created a debris basin on the north side of North Ogden Divide Road to catch any future landslide areas. Because this is, if you go back 20 years ago or so, an area of a landslide across North Ogden Divide Road. So this is the completion of White Rock. It's preliminary subdivision plat. We did hold a technical review committee. There's a memo in there. Geologic hazard report has been completed, as it does include all areas, including phase 3 and 4. All lot widths are meeting the 100-foot lot width requirement, and all lots are at least 12,500 square feet. We held a pre-construction meeting today with the developer and had some questions on the viability of specifically 2 lots. Lot 410 and lot 411 on their buildable area. It's a pretty significant slope across those two. And so we asked, and I guess we don't have to do this because the lots technically meet frontage and they meet the size. They're both large. One's 17,700 square feet. The other's 18,649 square feet. So there's a lot of footprint for a building, but the concern is that with the slopes, are they going to be able to construct a home where a driveway isn't leading downward into filling a garage full of water, or we have massive cuts and fills across this area? Another important note is that everything east of 3090 North is a restricted lot. So that's lots 401, 402, 403, 404, 405. And the reason for that is that the indicated area of the fault line as proposed by their own geologic hazards, so the city didn't determine where this was, but does cross those lots. So the restrictions on those lots will be minimal cuts and fills. They can't cut the toe of the slope. They can't undermine North Ogden Divide Road. So they're going to have some limitations in what they're able to do on those lots when it comes to building permit time. And that's just something that we can approve now on a plat, put notes on a plat. But ultimately, when those lots are sold, that needs to be communicated over. Staff has really no other considerations or worries. There's no land drains in this area. We're beyond the area of the significant uphill and downhill cuts and fills that we were dealing with phase 3. All of the utilities seem to flow in this particular configuration, and lot sizes meet. So we're at a point where again, we're recommending approval of a preliminary plat for White Rock Phase 4 with, I would expect, some minor reconfiguration of probably some of these lots when they get a little closer to plan and elevation, when they get a little further in their engineering studies. But what we would be approving tonight is a 60-foot right-of-way with up to 12 lots on 7.98 acres that must meet all the requirements of the HP2 zone. And staff feels comfortable tonight recommending approval of that and getting them that far in the entitlement process, knowing that we'll have the engineering department, planning department, and building department weigh in heavily between now and final plat. So with that, I will take any questions.
From the planning department, when we see, even just looking down at lot 410 and 411, regardless of slope, just the setbacks themselves kind of bring into question the buildable area. But I think my question is if it meets the requirements that the city code requires, regardless of slope or setbacks, is there really much room for discussion, or is it just a recommendation?
Yes and no. And the yes and no comes with what happens with the road as it relates to the lot. And I'll relate this back to Jordan Park subdivision, which is Mountain Road at the southeast corner of the cove connecting to Michelle Lane. In order to make Nebo Drive come down and access Michelle Lane would have required 20 plus feet of cut in the road. So the road would have been like in a giant V, thereby making all of the lots that had frontage legally, when you zoom out to a 20 or 30,000 square foot, or bird's eye view, all of those lots would have been legal from a frontage and a size standpoint, but physically building on them would have been impossible. So being that the world isn't flat, one of the things we try to ask for is, how are you going to put a house on this lot? And there's a lot of creative ways to get houses on lots, but there's also still today, even in some of our flat areas of North Ogden, lots that do not have houses on them because it's been so difficult to, it's either so expensive to have an architect design a house that specifically fits that thing because they want to just buy a spec home set of plans for a few $100s and build that house. Or the cuts and fills become so expensive that a lot that normally would be in the realm of affordability has several $100,000s worth of retaining walls on it to build it So we ask the question, but again, we're not the developers. So developers can plat unbuildable lots. We try to encourage them not to do it.
Okay.
And so that's why we ask the questions up front. And there's enough fall between lot 410 and 411 that my question is that going to require, you know, more than one 11-foot retaining wall between the two lots in order to have a flat building box on 411 and a flat building box on 410? And so much of it is determined by what the slope of that road is as it comes around the corner on what like the top back of curb elevation is. And we have an idea of that today, but we don't have the full, and maybe Eric has them, but we don't have the full improvement drawings just yet to say, yep, we're good, we're comfortable. But but the law
some-
necessarily matters.
So we're posing the question, but somewhere in there, we are acknowledging that they can plat an unbuildable lot
Certainly.
and they can try to sell an unbuildable lot.
And if you talk to our city engineer, you can do a lot of things. You can flatten the world.
I'm
So,
just trying to clarify the
you know,
scope here. You know?
Yeah.
Scott, I think a follow-up question just to get this thinking straight in my mind. We recently had a situation come in front of Planning Commission where they were requesting an R lot restricted status because of a lot that they were finding to be somewhat unbuildable.
Sure.
So are we just in that same situation theoretically with 410 and 411 that eventually homeowners are going to come and say, we want an R designation to reduce setbacks so we can build? Like, is that where this could potentially end up?
These two by White Rock is the reason that the 30-foot to 20-foot setback reduction exists. So phase 1 of White Rock required a variance for any of those lots that needed to have a reduced front yard setback. And Rob Scott, the previous planning director, recognized that and said, hey, for lots that have over 10% slope on them, we should allow people to slide their house around to make it buildable. So we no longer require a variance. So it's very possible that lots 410 and 411 have reduced setbacks so that the home hovers a little closer to the street on both sides, giving some backyard and kind of taking the pressure off the hillside. But to be real honest, I look at the same plan set that you're looking at. So I'm not the expert, and we do have, luckily, our city engineer. So if we have a set of like a plan and profile set of plans yet, or there are further concerns, but it was brought up today in the pre-construction meeting of are these two lots viably buildable? And that's just for me, you know, for me as planning director, and Ryan reviews 99% of our building permits. Like we want to make sure we get to yes with people and that we don't sell lots and title lots that are essentially unbuildable. So we try our best right now not to.
In your meeting, did you get to yes?
It was about other things. It was about timing of utilities and things. I mean, I don't know if Eric wants to weigh in. I'm not terribly concerned. Like, this is an area where there's a bit of a knoll, and maybe it's just going to be that they carve that knoll down and we build 2 buildable lots. The effect of lot 410 and 411 on the whole is much less than the effect of phase 1 White Rock as it related to the older homes, because there was some significant backyard fall that they ended up with and kind of had like not retaining walls, but a pretty significant slope. But it's a concern. If you drive out there and you take a look at it, you know, I've had these questions, and how are they going to put a house there? And there's also some rocks out there that are like the size of small trucks. So they've got some other, this is a really interesting area of the world of North Ogden. And phase 4 will complete it, and we'll get it done. So
Oh, sorry, go ahead. One point of clarification, since we're a recommending body, whoever choose.
not in this case. You are the,
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
you are the
Thank you.
final decision
Thank you.
maker.
Yep.
Yeah, but
Yep, that answered my question.
okay. So in this case, the land use authority, as identified, as requested by the state, identified by the council, is you. The planning commission is the final land use authority for preliminary subdivision plats.
Yeah.
But it's very possible that this gets approved and it entitles 12 lots. And then we, through the engineering process, say, this doesn't work. So you can keep 12 lots, but the road is going to move 40 feet to the west in order to flatten the world a little bit and create better building boxes. And that's where you might compare a preliminary plat to the recorded subdivision plat and see that there are differences. But the things that should stay the same are total number of lots, roadway widths, general configurations, any R lots, stormwater management, those, these core elements that you are all entitling at this point and saying, yes, go forth and you can build a 12 lot subdivision.
Yeah,
Yes.
I guess it's a similar question that I have on a couple of those restricted lots, like 404 in particular, maybe 403. But the dotted line that goes across that on the plat, is that the limit of the buildable area?
No, the thick line is we
Thick
think,
line.
the thick line is we think that's where the fault line is. And then the lesser dotted lines are but it could probably be somewhere in here. And the reason is because, and let's have Lauren tell us, he explained to me one day about the alluvial fan, and there's areas right here where this is one of the best visual alluvial fans in the state that we have, which is like a giant landslide, thousands of years ago. It's possible that the fault line could be 100 feet deep. So they went out and dug a whole bunch of test pits. Their engineer who did the geologic study, and they said, based on test pits and information we have, that's the best information we've got, we believe this line to essentially approximately be the fault line. And then what the city does is we said, an engineer told us that's where the fault line is. And we don't agree or disagree. We essentially review it for kind of like, yeah, that seems reasonable, like thumb in the wind. But Eric doesn't put his stamp on it and say, yeah, I believe that's where the fault line is. We've done our due diligence as a city to request the geologic study to be done. But whenever you see a fault line and then a double dashed line, it's like, it could be somewhere in here is kind of the way to think of that.
But the lighter dashed line doesn't limit their buildable area to the west of that.
It sort of does in that we wouldn't want them to make some significant cut. Like you don't drive a tractor up there and just start like digging at the toe of the hillside. So we're pretty sensitive on these lots when they do their flat areas in their backyards and their retaining walls. And that's been all of phase 2 and 3 of White Rock as it's gone around 3090 north, just north of Mountain Road. We have been really careful in the review of those.
And I guess in the review, you feel comfortable with a viable buildable area, because I know there's a lot of slope in that particular.
We hope so. I know it's hard to stand out there. I've been out there several times and I've driven my truck out there. I've walked this whole area to its limits and up and down, and it's really hard to know. You can bring in one thing North Ogden has is a lot of really good structural fill, which is kind of term like dirt with lots of rocks in it because it doesn't move very well. It locks together. So where the road ends up ultimately, it could actually raise the road in some areas and build a flat spot. So it's not even a cut that we're worried about. We're sort of like backfilling against North Ogden Divide Road area. But when you stand out there on that corner and you hold the plans in your hand, for me, it's hard to visualize exactly where each of these lots and flat spots and homes will end up.
I have a question for you regarding the trail.
Yeah.
I believe since this is the last phase, will this be completing that trail all the way to the trailhead?
In one spot it will, which is the trail along North Ogden Divide Road that is behind the guardrail. Yes. So there's a trail that runs on the top end of all of those 401, 402, 403 lots with a guardrail extension all the way up to the trailhead or to the extent of the property. The trail that was initially talked about with Rob Scott in phases, way back in phases 1 was something that got you from Mountain Road up to that trailhead. And This phase 4 configuration doesn't have it, but we've spoken to the property owner to the south, Carson Jones, about what a trail, connection might look like. So we haven't completely cut off our ability to get a different mountain road to parking lot trailhead. But for this particular phase, the trail would rely on the North Ogden Divide Road Trail behind the guardrail that's being installed as each part of this phase from the corner of 31 and or Mountain Road and 3100 all the way up to the trailhead outside of the city limits.
So this project will build that to the trailhead.
It will. Well, it'll build it to the extent of its property. I don't totally know if the extent of its
Is
property.
there a gap between there?
You don't know.
We know?
Trails.
Yeah.
Let's see.
And we have, applicant representative, so please.
Greg Nelson, Pleasant View, with Horrocks Engineers. We're the engineer of record. I'm the engineer of record. Maybe a couple clarifications as we're talking about this. So the fault line, actually, we did identify the fault line with some trenches and we know that it is there. So that was something that was found in the field with that geotechnical research that we did. So that's a known location. The fault represents something that moved in the last 10,000 years. So that's how we can see that when we dig. The trail itself follows our property line, and then once our property deviates from the divide and the county, that's where we stopped with the trail. There's a lot of trails across that hillside that are just kind of random. Is there an official trail, and how that connects is a little bit unclear as far as how that connects in, but there is space in there for future connection to the south of us. Regarding the slopes on the lots, this phase is actually flatter than the previous phase 3, where you had roads where the upper road was here and the lower road was here. This is actually where they're coming back together. And so the difference from the upper road to the lower is actually less. And the road's kind of at that 10%. So there's kind of a 10% grade, 10, 15% grade across the lots. And so between the lots, it's a little bit better buildable space than the previous phase that was approved and been constructed on. Any other questions?
Is there any, I've worked before in an area where there was a fault line and it brought up a ton of restrictions. Are these lots going to have related restrictions? Or is everyone dealing with that in the preliminary planning?
I mean, there are restrictions on those lots. That's what the R designation is on there. So it'll have some restrictions related to how, they can build and develop their individual site plans. And so in our design, we don't just, determine what those individual site plans will be for those residents. So they'll come back to the city for approval of those layouts, right? But there will be restrictions on those lots.
Well, I think my question is when people purchase these lots, those restrictions are known. Do they have to get another geotech report? Do they have to go through all of that? Or is there a master record here? Because it's just kind of been an issue on other developments.
Yeah, there's a master record in this case. So everything in White Rock is on helical piers. So there's some foundation requirements as part of the geotechnical. But if they were going to say extend their building plot area and do a cut into the hillside, building department would require a geotechnical associated with that to show that you're not going to undermine North Ogden Divide Road.
But when any of these landowners come in for a permit, the geotech is on record here.
Yep.
Okay.
Plus it will be shown on the plat.
Okay.
It will be referenced.
It's referenced on the plat, and it has a designation on the plat. So as they purchase it, they'll see that information.
Yeah, it's plat note number 11 specifically in this, and I just double checked the notes, but that the geologic hazards evaluation prepared by these people, this is the number, this is the date. So that gives the home builder the information to go out, grab a copy of it. We keep a copy of that on record. It's government records requestable if necessary. The engineer has a copy of it, and that's easily and widely shared. Like we want houses that are built safely and stick to the hillside as well. So
Yeah, go ahead.
Question,
Right here.
again, I apologize, I'm the new guy here.
Oh.
But in terms of, we're on alluvial fan, there's some risk here with the grading, it sounds like. Does our process include some kind of risk management elements on something like this kind of a project with our attorney? Is there an element, do we have I'm sure we have a risk manager, it's probably him.
it's actually not. It's Casey Hunsaker is our risk manager. So we have a risk manager in the city. The Utah is an extremely property rights pro state. So a city's ability to tell a property owner that a piece of property is not developable is an extremely high bar to clear. And it's typically like, we actively watched this piece of ground fail, and for that reason, we're not going to let you subdivide. But a developer might come back and say, but I have a geotechnical engineer that tells me if I put this type of fill in and this type of compaction results that I can develop. And then that's when we sort of say, okay, we've covered ourselves there. Yeah. So it's really hard to tell somebody no, especially just at this point of a subdivision process.
My other question is, I wonder again, because I'm not fully aware, but I'm becoming very aware here tonight. On the technical report, when I look at the fire marshal, is that our fire marshal?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yep.
Okay. So I just think about what's happening in California with the fires. Is there elements in the technical review on that risk that exists, so we help ourselves so we don't have
from a
similar element where fire hydrants don't work and things like that?
I mean, from a design standpoint, we're following code requirements for fire hydrant, placement and access for trucks and providing that space for turnaround. But we follow the direction from the code related to that and for your local fire marshal's input on how that's laid out. But it's pretty standard in how that's done. Every 300 feet, there's a hydrant
So
and then
just given
access.
the grades so close to the mountain,
Yep.
that's part of the process.
Yes.
And
That's good.
yeah, we have discussed in past meetings and we can kind of fill you in, but just some of North Ogden's planning in terms of trying to make sure water, if there's some tank, I think the word was tank, that was just used, that they've been installing to ensure that there's adequate water pressure and flow. So
Outstanding.
anyway, but yeah, we can kind
Outstanding.
of catch up on
Okay,
some of
thank
that,
you.
but
Thank you, Ryan.
Any other questions for me?
I think we're good. Thank you
Okay,
for.
thank you. Good to see you, Lauren.
Any other comments from members of the public? All right, commissioners, any other discussion? I only had one question. When we were talking about the trail, I don't want to, go back and beat it up, but in the staff report, there was a paragraph in there that said White Rock subdivision committed to providing an east-west trail connection to Mountain Road somewhere in the approximate area. And it was called out in the technical review committee memo, reflected in the applicant's response and should be a condition of approval. I'm not sure if that's exactly what I heard you say. I thought you said that they only go to the end, they don't have to do a connection.
Yeah. So this originally, I think White Rock, the way it seemed like it was conceived, and this is, I've been here 3.5 years. So White Rock phases 1 and 2 precede me, but I think originally they had talked about maybe doing a conservation easement on the hill and retaining some of the user created trails that crisscross the hill that are below the North Ogden Divide Road. And that was not preserved in phase 1, not preserved in phase 2 or phase 3. So when you go up to the parking lot right now and you drop off the parking lot, and that's unincorporated county. So you're outside the city limits, but you drop off, it turns into a spider web network of trails that you can ultimately get over to like Big Rock and Coldwater Creek and that area to the south. So we were trying to protect that. And I think the trade-off, what we got was the guardrail for pedestrian safety and a trail that follows Mountain Road up to the terminating point of this property which to get the county to build the rest of it likely might not be that big of a a hurdle, especially not the guardrail. The guardrail saves people from, jumping off the hill and landing in somebody's backyard at this point. But it was conceived originally, discussed originally, but then as the subdivision has built out, we just haven't preserved like an under the roadway cross hill easement. And we talked extensively with the developer in phase 4 about could there be a conservation easement on these large lots that run up the hillside and these, because they're really unusable. I mean, somebody might go up there and hand dig like maybe a small fire pit or something, but for the most part, they're just gonna have these big hillsides. And the city isn't equipped to own a conservation easement on the hillside. We don't have equipment to maintain that. And I don't know that we want the liability. So at this point, I think if you felt extremely strongly that there needs to be a trail from like 3090 North or Mountain Road up to the trailhead that's different than the one being provided, you could probably lean on the old TRC memos going backwards and do it. But I think at this point, just given the way the subdivision is developed, it's sort of impractical to require much beyond the pedestrian trail along North Ogden Divide Road up to the trailhead. Unfortunately, I mean, I love trails. Like I hate to see the user created trails go away, but it's difficult at times to, keep all of them.
Discussion?
I've seen that trail. I know where it ends. I can see where it's been sort of developed to, and it's not difficult at all to get to the parking lot there or to access Big Rock. So, that probably not a major concern of mine.
All right, I'd entertain a motion.
Want me to try again? There's not as many letters. I'll make a motion to approve the preliminary plat for the White Rock Phase 4 subdivision.
I'll second it.
We probably should add our conditions of approval. Yeah.
So it would be, do you accept a friendly amendment to your motion that would be, I
I want to approve it as is.
recommend approval as recommended to include the conditions.
As
of
recommended in
approval.
the staff report.
Yeah.
Nothing extra from our discussions
That'll work.
today.
That
Oh, let
works.
me redo this.
Well, that works. If you're
Okay.
willing to accept her amendment, and then is there a second on that?
All right.
Friendly.
I'll second.
Okay,
And then,
we're good.
so that would put us in discussion, correct, before vote on this. So Scott, just to clarify, just for our knowledge moving forward, so what's been added is staff report, is that, but in the conditions of approval, we've got the technical review committee memo, staff report, and engineering report. Is staff report a term that can just capture all of that, or should they be called out separately? Just a-
Yes, it can capture all of them because in the staff report was embedded the TRC memo and the engineer's memo and fire department recommendation. All
Just
that,
an
yeah.
important clarification for us, okay.
You could probably just even call it staff reports, and that would incorporate more than just make it easy. Reports is. Yeah.
All right, any other discussion? Let's take a vote. Commissioner Watson,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Neighbor,
Yes.
Commissioner Gardner,
Yes.
Commissioner Webb,
Yes.
Commissioner Bailey,
Yes.
and I vote yes. One is approved. At this time, if there are any other public comments, related to an agenda item or not related to an agenda item, we would welcome that.
We have one more item.
One more item.
One lot.
Yeah.
Oh, pardon me.
Thought you were just being extra.
We're done.
You,
Okay, item number 10, consideration and action regarding administrative application, preliminary plat approval for the Stevens one lot subdivision located at approximately 1060 East Jake Drive. Forgot about that one.
Thank you. So this is a one lot subdivision that typically would not come to planning commission, but staff is not permitted to accept roadway dedication. And this particular one lot subdivision would have either had to be the terminus of Jake Drive or a cul-de-sac bulb, which again, we can't accept public improvements. So you typically don't see one lot subdivisions. This is an area that's in the farthest northeast corner of the cove. Jake Drive has a little stub street that's stuck out for years and years and years. A property owner purchased 4.738 acres there and is recommending to extend Jake Drive out for 200 feet, which is the minimum frontage requirement, and lot sizes in the HP3 zone are 2 acres or larger. So this will be larger, 4.73 acres, a single family home. The road is not long enough that it requires a turnaround, so that as you come around Nebo and you have Jake Drive, that operates as what we'd consider a hammerhead turnaround for fire flow. The structure will be located within 250 feet of a hydrant, but the structure will also exceed, I think, the 63 or 6,500 square foot requirement that says thou shalt now sprinkle your home, so that the house will be fire protected. It'll basically be fully embedded in the scrub oak, which, you know, given the California fires, like this is an area of the city we should start to think about as it develops what we do with fire protection and wildland interface issues. But it's a single structure. And it will be fire protected, given that it's going to be of significant size. So the plans that you received are more like a site plan that you would get as part of the building permit plan. So as the house located on there, as its driveway turnaround, it's not a plat in the way that we need a plat with the signature blocks. So we've spoken to the engineer, we've provided that back to them with the signature blocks. But given that it's one lot, we're comfortable moving it forward to preliminary the way that it's drawn, because with or without the signature plat blocks on there, and when they pull the house off, that doesn't change the configuration of everything. From staff standpoint, some of the critical components of Jake Drive is that this opens up to 200-ish acres. I mean, at least a 55-acre parcel that runs north and south, but it's about 200 acres that swings around to Mason Cove. So maintaining Jake Drive as a thoroughfare is absolutely critical to us. And in the subdivision process, what we requested is that the right-of-way be proposed and shown on the plat. So they're not dedicating it to us in terms of we get to own it. And we may actually, it may turn over to North Ogden City from a tax standpoint, but we're not going to require them to do asphalt, curb, gutter, stubs, all of that sort of thing until such time that future development happens. And this particular property owner may purchase more land and then, you know, build additional houses or property up in the area. But what we've tried to do is preserve Jake Drive's ability to continue and stub to the next property owner, so we aren't cutting someone's ability to develop off. And then from what I understand, we can serve this area with culinary water and secondary water, but we're kind of right on the verge of the elevation level that the current water tank can provide culinary water to. So if you start to develop much further up the hill, there's going to need to be, you know, someone's going to have to bite the bullet and put a water tank in that's higher up the hill in the Forest Service in order to provide culinary water to it. But this one particular home, we think Jake Drive does have enough pressurized culinary water to provide services to. So in the technical review committee, culinary water, storm water, and sewer, we're all comfortable with the way it is. And it will flow all of those utilities from the home out and into our existing system. So there's really nothing, you know, stopping it from like a technical standpoint, and staff is recommending approval of the one lot subdivision. And we do have an applicant representative with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Scott, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Does the the secondary water system, are they willing to provide us a will serve letter for this?
Yeah, please do.
Geneva Blanchard, Far West. Okay, so secondary water, and this should be in the TRC review notes. Their board meeting is tonight, and they won't issue the letter until the board meeting. However, they had a representative at the TRC meeting that said, we're good to serve it. We just need to go through our process, and they only meet once a month. So I should have it tomorrow.
Okay.
So yes, we're good there.
Another question, being that this is on the downhill side of the roadway, I know we're not approving or reviewing the building site plan itself, but elevation wise, are we gonna make it to the sewer and able to be able to
Yes.
get,
So the sewer is being grabbed out of Jake Drive.
yes,
Yeah.
but the house is downhill from the sewer line. Do we have
Yes.
enough slope to get
Yeah,
to that?
and that
sewer
was
line?
talked about as well, that their engineer, Wasatch Civil, felt that we were fine, the home was fine, and would still pump back to the street and go down. That it would flow, sorry, I shouldn't use the word pump, but it would gravity to Jake Drive and then
And
go down.
will that accommodate that pool that you showed there too?
It should, that question might be above me,
Drain.
but
As far as draining it and
Yeah.
things like that? in
Pools
the
are,
area?
pools are just close.
yeah, the pool shouldn't hook at all
They'll
to
have
the
to,
sewer.
if they ever, anyone that ever needs to drain a pool, they'll go pump it into a drain.
Yeah.
So.
And we have several homes in the Cove with similar issue to this, where you have grinder pumps in the basement that it's just a private investment they had to make in order to get sewer up and out of a basement to hit elevation. And we have,
Right.
more than one of those. So there are private level engineering investments that they could make in this home that will be worth it to the homeowner if they have to do.
Yeah. And the basement very well may need an in-home little pump, but the main floor, at least gravity's to Jake Drive.
Do you have any other questions for the applicant?
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this item? There is a discussion now.
No,
Not
he's,
public discussion.
he's the old engineer. I'm just asking him a question, so I don't have any questions.
Thought I would entertain a motion.
We move that we grant preliminary plat approval to the Stevens one lot subdivision, subject to the conditions of the engineer's report, the TRC memo, and conditions of the staff report.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, let's go ahead and take a vote. Commissioner Watson,
Yes.
Commissioner Neighbor,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Webb,
Yes.
Commissioner Gardner,
Yes.
Commissioner Bailey,
Yes.
and I vote yes. All right, thank you. Okay, I think I covered everything.
Yes.
Sorry about that. All right, yeah, so any other public comments online or in the room?
Then I got 53.25.
Any remarks from the planning commissioners?
I'd like to reiterate maybe what Mr. Delpas mentioned earlier on, but I like to thank the previous commissioners, Eric and Brandon. And they were valuable and will be missed sincerely. I know Eric's here, but I know Brandon's here in spirit, I'm sure, thinking about walkability and whatnot. And he served. Yeah. He served for, I think, 10 plus years and wanted to continue. So my gratitude to them. Yeah, it's great, but also welcome to the new guys. So it's very exciting. So you just have huge shoes to fill. So no pressure.
We'll
Looking forward to work with him. He's gone.
It's not that great.
Guys, is there something we need to, are we good?
I just wanted to add for comment that this has been a long meeting, so I don't want to go on too long, but I am really interested in helping the city plan for the future. I'd like to be a little more active on this planning commission with bringing forward future planning and also keeping track of some of the things that maybe have come up in conversation, but that we haven't really actively pursued in terms of future planning. Because once again, we know if we get an application in front of us, we have to approve it if it meets the conditions of the code. It seems like in the city, there's been talk with, city council, et cetera, but also here in our body about some changes that could be helpful to the city. Things that come up, in my opinion, are things like Fruitland Drive. How do we maybe want to manage trail systems and sidewalk, water, et cetera. We've also talked about, we have a certain zone that has no limitation to wall height that could potentially come back into the city. I think that zone's built out right now, but the point is, I just want to bring that to the commission's attention. I'm happy to do any work with our city employees to maybe bring some of those forth. We're learning how to plan as a commission. I don't know that we've done a whole lot of like active planning rather than retroactive. So I'd like to just maybe get your guys' thoughts if you're up for us maybe giving some guidance, which I do think is the indication I believe that the city would also maybe like as well.
Yeah, I know we talked about this at the last meeting
Yes,
too, and
workshop.
perhaps having like our second meeting of the month, more of a workshop type of, brainstorming or just sitting down with the city's planning staff and kind of talking about more solidifying some of the ideas and concepts that we've kind of thrown out there, just like, well, what if we did this or what about that? But usually we don't have an opportunity to pursue it much further because of the structure of the meetings that we've had. So
Yeah.
maybe if, I think it would have been difficult this meeting because there was so much on the agenda, but perhaps some of the meetings, second meeting of the month or some of a meeting perhaps that doesn't have such a full agenda that we could maybe do some of that. Like maybe a tables down at the bottom.
Yeah.
And I think the things that we talked about were like just the commercial development zones, certainly.
Absolutely.
Maybe Barker Park, the trail system is always something that we've maybe had a lot of discussion about, but maybe haven't pursued it much further. So I appreciate those thoughts.
Would that be just additions or adjusting the general plan, what you're talking about here?
I think it would be taking the general plan and being more proactive instead of reactive. So in other words, to say, if the general plan calls for, say along Washington Boulevard, for that to be more of a mixed use or a commercial corridor, to actually maybe be proactive in changing the zoning for that or doing, upzoning or there could be any number of
Right.
tools that I think Mr. Hess and certainly the Mr. Call, have kind of discussed with us in the past. It's just
Pragmatically, I think it'd be nice during those sessions to be like, hey, what would you like to see?
yeah.
And then there could also be a dose of realism that we can get educated on, like, yeah, that's a great thing to hope for, but that's
But the
actually not
reality-
realistic.
Yeah, it may not be
You know,
reality.
And so that can create kind of creative thought and whatnot. But I think in the spirit of planning, like we've got limited spots that are open, but we still have some important spots. And so how can we make that easier for developers? They're the ones that are going to build it. And what would we like to see? What do we think North Ogden City would benefit from? And then we can get feedback to say like, yeah, it'd be great, but that ain't happening.
I'd say everyone, all of us, put some thoughts together and maybe have something on the table for when there is no agenda.
Yeah.
I mean, we run into that often enough, and I usually have it blanked out in my calendar and then there's no agenda and I'm like, I didn't take advantage of this missing day, so I think that would be, to sort of put something like on a side list of on one or two occasions where we have the no agenda, then we could have those discussions and meetings.
I think procedurally it makes things a little cleaner too, because if we start doing like a subcommittee or something,
Yeah.
we like to operate in a public environment. And so by doing it during one of our regular scheduled meetings, the public obviously is notified of that meeting and.
Yeah, it's recorded, it's put out
We're
there.
not trying to squeeze it in,
Yeah.
like right now, it's just an example. So I think if we want to put together some thoughts or if there's anything that comes up from the city standpoint, then, I still like to have the no meeting days. I don't want to get rid of it, but I do think those are the best days to maybe do something that's a little more,
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know.
Productive,
purposeful,
yeah,
productive.
yeah.
I mean, here we have
Creative.
lots of discussions and I think we're all kind of, this is a relatively young planning commission in terms of our, there's some geezers here, there's some geezers here, but we're all been here
tenure.
not a long amount of time. But I think some of our questions and stuff like tonight are, we're all just getting our bearings a little bit, I mean, I've been here a year and I'm still kind of going, what are we doing?
Absolutely.
Because we talk about a lot of these things, but then at the end of the day.
Then we never
we're
do any-
just-
right.
We're just shuffling.
We're
it
just
to
talking,
the
right,
city
unless we
council.
take some more action.
So I agree that maybe the basis of that is to make this, make it seem like we're doing more, because a lot of this is procedural, right?
Yes.
We're making sure that we're asking some questions that come up, but anyway, those are just my
I
thoughts.
think another thing that could be helpful for those times when we don't have a meeting is like during this discussion time, if anybody throws out a thought, like, hey, can we, it's always nice to have things that are tabled. And then people can think about them a little bit. But if someone has a thought that either comes up through this meeting or whatever, to say, hey, can we just make a note on this to table it for the no meeting day?
Exactly.
No agenda day.
That's just kind of my.
And then people can think about it and they drive by that piece of land or whatever and that, that can be a very low, impact way of creating
And
things
some
that are
might get
prioritized.
solved in one meeting and some might be a longer project.
Yeah.
I don't even know what we're really talking about or considering, but I think there are bigger goals or agendas that maybe we're not getting to because
I noticed
discussion.
in the minutes, you talked about economic development a little bit.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I think that was a priority that you were kind of pushing for.
Yeah, and so like some of your background and experience would
Yeah.
probably be invaluable,
Okay.
during some of those meetings, but,
Like, just to have something to compare to or something you recommend or something that you've seen that you're like, do not do that.
obviously
do
our, Mr. Hess is our community and economic development director and,
Yeah.
he does a great job of that. So, I think, just in any of these ideas that we have, it'd probably be great for further discussion.
One other comment about that too, and this is a compliment to staff, is I think staff has done a really good job since I've been on the planning commission of moving things to where they can be for staff approval. So that we're not hashing out those things, so that we can create the space and time necessary to discuss planning. And some of that came from, John's dad coming in and providing training and things so that we could see that that was important. So I want to commend staff of, looking
Yeah.
at that so that we can be more efficient in those activities.
Well, I think they're doing such a good job. That's why I'm sitting here wondering what, we're recommending staff reports
Yeah.
most of the time. And I think that's,
Sit for
That's
an
a-
hour and say, we recommend yes.
yeah, I can't even get
It's
the
not really
motion
funding,
right,
it's
but.
Admittedly, we haven't always.
We haven't, so I do think the procedural part is important, but they're doing a really good job and they're explaining things. Really, one of the reasons why I joined the planning commission is I went to another meeting in another town and things were not explained well to the commissioners from the planner. Maybe there wasn't one, I don't know. It was a disaster. We don't really run into that here. So I guess I'm just continuing to say that with such an efficient system with staff, we can still do the rubber stamp stuff that we're doing and poke our heads in when we need to, but if there's anything else that is required or on the wish list, I'd be happy to take those blank days or whatever, so, but it's late enough, we'll collab.
We really got to have planning that holds people like Eric accountable. I mean, that's the bottom line.
He don't care.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Hess.
Thank you. Point of order.
Community and Economic Development Director report.
Yeah, so just a couple of notes. We did send over all of our department goals to John, who's compiling them as the city engineer, or city manager. So that's all departments, lots of goals that'll go to the city council. We'll hear back some feedback and information on that. That was what was referenced last meeting, talking about economic development. Also, we are right in the midst of the Utah legislative session. So I would say expect some changes to be coming down on land use. Some of the things that have been talked about are minimum lot sizes being required if homeowners or home builders rather can hit minimum pricing. So if they can hit area median income values to sell those homes, they may be entitled to smaller lots than our current zoning allows. So very, very interesting things to watch. If you'll, I can send the link out again. I believe I sent it out to all the planning commission members, but it is the Utah League of Cities and Towns Legislative Policy Committee meetings are noon on Mondays, every Monday except for holidays, and usually those jump to Tuesday. You have to register for every single one of them. They're available by Zoom. And I'd say if you go up to the Capitol, you might have 50 people there, but there's like 250 people from across the state on the Zoom call. So it's extremely well attended, and it is worth your time to just turn on in the background, because these are things that are affecting everything from how food trucks operate to business licenses to stormwater protection to the state literally telling us what our minimum lot sizes are going to be in our residential zones. So these are important and critical things coming down the line. And then I'll just, recognize Eric Thomas is in the room with us tonight, but thank you to Lauren and Stephen for coming in. You, between last Tuesday when the council appointed you and tonight, you both committed your time to coming and doing a 1-hour training with me, which is big. And that's why I can't talk anymore, because, I've said all the words that I can say. But it's a good training, and also it got you up to speed. So we have a full planning commission who legally is allowed to make recommendations and decisions based on state code and in training. So thank you for your commitment to the task, and looking forward to working with you all. And congratulations, Chair Nancaro and Vice Chair Green. Looking forward to this year and how that goes. So we'll make sure that that's reflected in Joyce's master sheet of everything that gets updated. And we'll look forward to having that be your responsibilities. So thank you. And Ryan, do you have anything?
Nothing big to add. I guess I know part of our department goals is to be more accurate with our meetings here, with our trainings with you guys. And with planning, we have some general plan updates we have to make. So I'm excited that you guys are excited to do planning, because it's all applicable and good. So thank you.
Don?
Nothing big other than just those of you who are new, these mics are fairly sensitive, and the Zoom will pick up a lot of stuff that the room won't. So just keep that in mind. So, but thank you all. And, thank you to Eric for his time, and thank you for Brandon. Brandon especially had the knack for when someone would come to the podium that was scared, making them feel comfortable, making them feel heard. And so you need to nominate someone to take on that role, because that's going to be a big gap that took the tension out of a lot of meetings. So.
Hey, Steve.
Just a
Oh,
quick
sorry.
question. These screens aren't working. Is that?
It has something to do with the way the system worked. I had to restart this one to get it to kick on, but I couldn't restart them all without risk of losing the camera. So it'll be working next time.
Steve, first night, no one helped me, so I'm going to ask you to make a motion to adjourn.
I was getting intimidated by those motions.
Yeah, I'm still figuring out, but I'm going to push it your way first night, let you do
I
one.
make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that motion.